Yeah, you gotta check it out. Are we running?
Yeah, we are.
Okay, we're back at the Wizard's Life, and I'm with Mark. Just met Mark, and we got Wizard, Lou, Mark, and we're talking. Let's talk about. Well, first of all, Mark, is there any question you have for the Wizard? Because I was going to bring up a topic, but I'd rather.
No, go right ahead.
I was thinking, how about dimensional? Going to the next dimension.
So what's a higher number, a 2 or a 9?
A 9.
Right, that's what people say.
Mark, would you?
I'd have guessed 9.
Yeah. All right. So me and Mark are together.
Wrong.
We knew that.
This is why.
Hey, I'm married. I've been wrong all morning.
This is why we have a wizard. So here's 2, here's 9, and 2's bigger than 9.
Right.
Because?
Oh, you want to know?
Yeah, well.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you wanted to know. Okay.
Please.
So if there's 10 levels in a dimension, you get to a 10. A 10 is not perfection, it's masteries of that dimension. Like you're in martial arts, you understand that when you get to a top level of a belt, it's not perfection, it's masteries of that dimension, and you go to the next dimension. And you start over. So a 2 in the next dimension is actually higher than a 9 in the previous dimension.
Ah, so the 2 in the second dimension is bigger than the 9 in the 1 dimension.
Right, so if somebody says, what's a higher number, a 2 or a 9, you just say, well, it depends on which dimension you're talking.
I have to say I've never said that in any of my conversations. I've just always gone with the 2's lower than the 9.
Right.
But now that we're aware, hit that like
Because you're
button.
not a multi-dimensional being yet.
Yet.
Like a wizard.
Like a wizard. So
right.
This then brings the question, how many dimensions are there for a wizard? Or is it undimensionable?
It's infinite.
Infinite dimensions.
Uh-huh.
So when we speak to you, which dimension are we in now? Are we in dimension 1?
I'm seeking to be in a dimension just slightly above yours.
You're seeking to be, but you have to be in my dimension, so we're on the same dimension.
Right, otherwise it's just you have no idea what I'm talking about.
Because you'd be in a different dimension, I wouldn't even be talking to you.
Yeah, or you'd just be clueless.
Okay,
So
so
people, our listeners might think you're clueless.
but then they'd know.
Right, then
Right.
they'd be like,
All right, so Mark, any questions for the wizard? Now that we know that we're going to talk
he's
dimension.
amazing. He went ahead and shared something that the wizard had never heard before.
Go ahead, Mark. Refresh us.
About the groupthink, the
Well,
syndrome.
Yes. Well, the excessive authority acceptance syndrome.
Well, you got to do the work.
I can never do that without
I know
going
you
through
got to
the-
do that because if you don't do that, see, go ahead.
EAAD.
Okay,
EAAD.
EAAD. So you just go ahead and say it's the EAAD syndrome, and then all the medical doctors are out there like, I don't know. I haven't heard
And
of
what
that.
is that? Let's break those.
Well, it's like
The acronym for that.
it's like all those other psychological syndromes, attention deficit disorder.
Sure.
Okay.
So which one is this?
This one is excessive authority acceptance disorder. Excessive authority.
This applies
acceptance
to Harvest.
disorder.
If they had listened to him, they might not be in this situation. Sorry, go
Who?
ahead. Harvest Bible Chapel.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Excessive authority acceptance disorder is when a person is unduly deferential to an authority. So this disorder gets diagnosed very rarely because school teachers, who are the primary screen of psychological disorders, school teachers like this disorder. They don't want to report it because then they'll have students that actually question authority. So they reward people who have excessive authority acceptance disorder and allow them to go to the top of the class because they're nice, passive, easy to manage students.
So they're the best authority listeners.
They're the best. They listen to authorities better than everybody else. There was a scientific study that said that 83% of the guards in Nazi camps were victims of excessive authority acceptance disorder, which meant that none of them ever said, "Do you think we ought to be doing this?" Because instead they all said, "Well, I'm just following orders."
Or, well, there was consequences probably back then if you didn't follow orders.
Well, yeah, no, absolutely, but
That's a good reason to follow orders, by the way. I
Well,
highly
no, it's
recommend
not.
it for my children to follow orders.
see, you want them to have authority acceptance disorder.
No, I want them to just do what I tell them, it's pretty much. Or else they They get the shaft here,
Yeah.
the staff thingy.
Okay.
So, but anyway, but go ahead. Tell us.
So
more.
I think generally in our society, we have a undue deference to authority. So people are taught from the time they are 5 or 6 years old.
Don't go ahead and question your mother.
Don't, do what you're told. And then the result is that we get people who are 25 and 30 who suddenly say, I don't know how to be an entrepreneur. I don't know how to do anything other than have a job and have a boss who tells me what to do. You know, I have a good friend who says, you know, we spend 12 years beating all the creativity out of children. Then we spend 4 years where we let them have a little tiny bit of creativity in very narrow ranges. And then we spend the rest of their lives sending them to creativity seminars so that they can try to come up with new ideas. If we hadn't beat all the creativity out of them in the first place, we wouldn't need the creativity seminars.
Interesting. Wizard, thoughts?
So when you look at, like,
How does this pertain to dimensional thinking?
well, the more you know, the more you know you don't know. So how can you, I mean, have you been thinking a lot since you heard that the wizard's based on university studies? Because we know if universities study something, it must be true. Just like if doctors go ahead and say something, it must be true. Just like if Pastor James says something, it must be true. Unless the elders say something that's different. And if they both say something, well, if you both agree that 9's a higher number, if there's two people must be right. And so it's like authority goes ahead and wants everybody to follow them, but they don't understand the responsibility that comes with authority with that. And so you really don't want, you want to teach people, what's the most important thing for a parent, what's the most important responsibility of a parent?
To have your child be independent, properly,
And
properly treating people
And how do you go ahead and teach them to do that?
by giving them responsibilities that they can take.
So that's all fuzzy and all kinds of stuff, and there's all kinds of psychologists out there that go ahead and say you got to do this with your kids and not do this. That they don't know what they're talking about.
What would the wizard say?
You teach your kids how to think,
And how do you do that?
right? Because parents,
educate the parents. that are
because the
watching.
parents don't know how to think either.
So how do you do it?
You listen to the wizard, of course.
Let's hear it, wizard. What would you tell parents right now if you could look in that camera and tell parents some advice on how to make their children independent? Because you have little wizards, and they're all independent. They're all out of the.
Every one of them.
Is it a house that the wizard lives in, or is it a dimension?
It's like a castle.
They're all out of the castle dimension,
Right.
and they're in their own dimensions.
So,
What was the advice to get them out of their own dimensions?
well, I think the advice I would give is don't tell your kids that this is not, see this, if you talk about, like my best friend, it's better. Because when you talk about the wizard, he's
Well, let's
so
just
far.
stay focused on the wizard. What would
Okay,
the
I'm
wizard
just
tell them?
warning you.
Here we go.
Okay, I'm warning all of you. I'm warning all of you. You're not going to understand what I'm going to say. You're going to totally misunderstand it. You're going to totally go ahead and just you know,
tell it out there.
especially the Christians. If you're a Christian, you're totally not going to like this. So you don't tell your kids they're wrong in how they think especially when they're teenagers.
So what do you tell them?
Right? Like there's no judgment. It's like, oh, you're stupid.
You can't tell teenagers anything. All you can do is ask them things.
Right, so you go ahead and say, that's interesting, that's one way to think about it.
So that's the answer, is that's interesting, that's one way to think about it. Then they come back, or they don't come back, and they either have the interest in finding out something deeper that you might know, or they don't.
Right, so you're not agreeing with them, but you're not telling them. Because if you understand dimensional thinking, you understand what they're saying, there is some truth to what they're saying. Like, it's not totally wrong, but you're not totally right. Like, you're not even a wizard, you're just a parent. Like, why do you think you're so smart? Like, have some humility.
That's why we need the wizard.
like you said something to your son when, like, I wish I would have known this when all the little wizards and wizardesses were little. So you went ahead and spent time with your when they were 5 years old.
I used to make Jesse practice saying the following thing: "You were right, and I was wrong, and I'm sorry." And he would get totally violent. He's like, "I didn't do anything. I'm not wrong." No. I'm not saying you did anything wrong. I'm saying I want you to know you can say these words, and your jaw will not drop off of the bottom of your face. Okay? That it is okay to say these words. And he called me up 5 or 6 years ago, and he said, of all the things you taught me, Dad, that was probably the best. That it's okay to just say, I was wrong. Sometimes it even works when you weren't wrong. So after I taught him the phrase, something came up, and he said, Jesse, you were right, and I was wrong, and I'm sorry. Yeah, but you don't have to mean that. You can just say it. You taught me that. I said, yeah, but I really was wrong, and I'm sorry, and you were right.
So you can say, you can lie?
Yeah, sure. If you don't lie to your kids occasionally, you're never going to get through it.
Now that's not the wizard talking.
Yeah, the wizard wouldn't say
The wizard did not say this.
The
Okay.
wizard would only speak in truths.
Right. The wizard is not saying.
He doesn't even know how to speak untruths.
Right. It's just crazy.
Yeah. That's
so what's the
Mark,
wizard?
That's why me and you are. Yeah.
Right. Like
Yeah,
you two
we're
are.
working on
You're two. So what is the wizard thinking right now?
What is the wizard thinking right now?
Do you not continually have that in your mind all the time?
Not continually, but I'm working on it.
Like the wizard's thinking, because he's the most humble creature in the whole
It's
universe,
clear to all of us.
right?
It is clear to all of us.
Yes, I've heard
Right.
that. I heard that from the wizard, and therefore
Right.
it must be true.
Yeah.
Well, the wizard's
Because
best friend says it
Because he
too.
only speaks in truths.
Right, the wizard's best friend tells him that too.
Well, let's just stay with the wizard for a moment.
Right.
So whatever the
You have
wizard
an
wants to
aversion
think.
against that best friend. I get it.
I just want the wizard's knowledge.
So the wizard,
It's my own self.
because the wizard is so humble, the wizard wonders, and then what he said about the, ADD, whatever, whatever he said about that, we had to talk about Justin Bieber. We had to talk about the 2 billion.
Well,
like, is this going to get 2 billion anyways? We're going to go
let's
back.
Stay on the dimensional thing.
Right. So the wizard is thinking,
The Beebs will
what
be on another show.
what if Mark understands something that the wizard doesn't understand?
Okay.
So the wizard
Is
is
it
curious
possible?
because it's like,
Well, does that take the wizard to that dimension? Like, for example, you said something earlier that Mark shared something with you that you learned.
right.
So you were at this dimension because you felt like going there. Then Mark taught you something and brought you up a dimension.
He helped me to realize something, that he drew something from my subconscious out to my conscious.
Right.
I mean, don't let him think too much. I mean, I knew it. Like, I don't want him to get a big head.
Yeah,
So
I'll be one where they have
he brought it to my attention from my subconscious,
Right.
where I knew it was true.
You were kind of wizard resting.
I
To
guess.
a certain degree.
Yeah.
He was wizard resting.
Right.
Then it was brought to his attention.
And
by
it's like,
Mark.
yeah, I totally get that.
And then he brought it up to a new
Right.
level to be able to bring it up to.
Right, so if
or
he
bring
can
it
tap
down to
into
us.
my subconscious,
Right.
maybe he can reveal something, because I don't understand how teaching your kids how to lie.
Oh, well, allow me to assist you. It is, if you
That-
only think one-dimensionally,
You have to go down to this.
it is
dimension.
not true that 2 is greater than 9. The only way to think about 2 as being greater than 9 is to think about it multidimensionally. So you have to tell things to your children that are not absolutely true on all dimensions. They're only true on the dimension that they live at. C.S. Lewis has a very famous example. When you tell children, don't take the pills that are in this bottle because they are full of horrid red things that will kill you. No, it's not true that they're full of horrid red things that will kill you, but it is true that you should not take the pills in the bottle. And if you're trying to scare the 4-year-old so that they don't take the pills, that lie allows the child to survive until they can transform into the higher dimension.
I don't know if I agree with this.
Wizard, why?
Well, what if
Well,
they
first-
go ahead and take the pills?
Well, they're not gonna take the pills they're terrified of.
Well, you obviously know different 4-year-olds than I do.
That's entirely possible. You still have a responsibility to make sure you use the childproof can.
So I think that it's interesting.
I don't think this will work for the wizard, because it sounds like half-truths or not truths, and the wizard doesn't work in that dimension. In any dimension, the wizard doesn't work.
It doesn't seem like there's the best-selling book of all times, the most famous all book. It says the truth will set you free. It doesn't say, well, sometimes the truth will set you free, sometimes it won't. So it's like the truth will set you free. So anytime you're not speaking the truth.
So correct me if I'm wrong, that book is the Bible?
Well, you said it, I didn't.
All right,
Yes,
so,
but that's correct.
so
Mark said it, and you said it, so it must be true.
if we're in this
At least on
dimension.
this-
So my best friend, he has 7 kids, and they went to the mall. They went to the mall at Christmas,
Back
and
to
whenever
the
you
friend.
go ahead and have 7 kids at the mall at Christmas, it attracts a
You have
lot of
chaos.
attention.
Yeah.
Well, no, because my best friend was very strong disciplinary. You did what he told, when he told, how he told, did it with a great attitude. So no, it was all organized, and so you have all these kids,
Yes.
and all of the adults would come up to the kids, and they'd go ahead and say, like, to the 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 or 12 or 15 or 16-year-old, they'd be like, are you looking forward to Santa? And that little 5-year-old would say, there is no such thing as Santa. And the devastation that the 4-year-old would go ahead and exert on a grown adult, it's like they just devastated them. It was just tragic for my best friend. Like, he saw how his kids at the age of 4 and 5 were destroying adults' whole existence.
Yeah.
So my best friend said to the kids, listen, we don't want to destroy adults.
As a general rule. Especially as a 4-year-old.
As a 4-year-old.
As a 4-year-old. When you're a grown-up, you may want to
I
destroy
don't
some adults.
know, help them to see truth. So my best friend taught them to say, just smile and say, we really love to celebrate, the truth of the reason for the season, the truth of the season. So it's not confronting them with something, it's massaging them, it's not lying to them.
No.
But it's not,
It's acknowledging the truth.
like if they say what that is, if they can do whatever you do. So you don't purposely, especially as a 4-year-old, destroy adults.
It's kind of like saying no to people. If you say no, it could have a physical reaction. If you say, I'm going to decline on that, they go, decline.
Yeah, so
Decline. What does decline? Oh, I think he means no, like that.
right.
Okay. Good. So, are we done with dimensions? I think we got dimensions.
Are you going to remember this next? Because you seem to have. Are you going to study this? Do we have tests on this or quizzes?
No quizzes.
Because I don't like to say anything twice.
No quizzes. And that, because you don't have to say something twice, is why we have the videos. Mark, pleasure
Nice
meeting
to
you.
meet you,
Thanks
Lou.
for being on the channel. Now you can go to the channel, look in the description, you can go to the Wizard Life. What is it, wizardlife.com?
The wizards.
The Wizards,
Plural. Life.com.
life.com.
Right.
You'll see that in the text anyway. Hit that like button. If you don't like what you're hearing, you really need it. If you do like what you're hearing, we'll see you next time.
Absolutely.